warm in his blanket. His bare feet feel the earth once more. So thankful for the smooth rock that has supported his body through the night hours. She is returning. So you can see this is an example of what I say, there are many layered meanings in the book. This could be read to a young child and they could just appreciate the lovely pictures, whereas to adults, the question is raised, are we talking about astral traveling? You know? So very much deeper meanings in it. Lights up savanna fields and acacia forest like a giant lantern. Nightjar screeches, an owl hoots and swoops, scratching, scrabbling and digging. Nothing distracts Kaha from her search. Kaha is called Kaha because in the Tswana language that is the name for pangolin. See how lovely the illustrations are. A shuffling, scraping sound, the patter of two small paws on the soil, brings Babalorki gently back to awareness. Obviously he had huge gain because he would be able to sell the ostrich meat and blah de blah de blah. We didn't go into too much detail, but anyway, this town was very sad, and then the people got together. They formed a group called Save Asa's Ostriches, which is going to today, and the ostriches were welcomed back, and they found some nests, a nest in the dunes and some eggs, and today the ostriches are still very happily living amongst the people who live in Asafontein. So
now they are, I mean, they are known for being pretty dangerous. I mean, an ostrich kick can take you out.
They are, but I just thought it was such a beautiful example of how when the human beings respect, you know, people walk along the streets, they push prams, children cycle and whatever, but they're all, it's a conservancy. The area is a conservancy. And there was a real knowledge amongst the inhabitants. They were all quite respectful of the ostriches. They all knew that if the ostriches, I think it's when they get red behind their heels, they're breeding, and people would just keep their distance. You know, they just didn't bother the ostriches. And the ostriches wouldn't attack the people, they wouldn't get too close because they wanted their space in the fynbos. There was lots for them to eat, and the people had their space, and they lived in harmony. And it was the most beautiful. I was lucky enough to live there for a little while, and it was the most beautiful thing to see. And I thought, this is such a perfect example. You know, we always think it has to be a major conflict. That it's either us, the humans, or them, the animals. It doesn't have to be like that. And I'm seeing a similar thing with monkeys
In Simonstown.
In Belito at the moment. At our launch, I did do a reading which focused very much on the dangers that pangolins faced, because we had an adult audience. But even though we've got an adult audience today, I think obviously we don't want to be too sad. So we're going to let me introduce you to, well, you know what, I'll start from the beginning. Here we go. One of my favorite pages, because I am mad about birds, and I think Caroline has done this owl and the nightjar just magnificently. So here we go. A full moon lights up savanna fields and acacia forest like a giant lantern. Nightjar screeches, an owl hoots and swoops, scratching searching, scrabbling, and digging, nothing distracts Gaga from her search. Gaga is called Gaga because in the Tswana language, that is the name for pangolin. See how lovely the illustrations are. A shuffling, scraping sound, the patter of two small paws on the soil, brings Babaloki gently back to awareness. Cloaked and warm in his blanket, his bare feet feel the earth once more, so thankful for the smooth rock that has supported his body through the night hours. She is returning.
It was time. Yeah. So depending on the condition, I mean, if a pangolin has just been in the trade for like 3 days and is in good condition, then they would aim to get it out as quickly as possible.
And I mean, when they don't eat for a week or 10 days, how much weight do they drop off? I mean, does it come off quickly?
Do you know how much weight? Yeah, it would come off very quickly.
It would be pretty substantial.
Yeah,
I mean,
they come in emaciated. You see them.
It's where their stomach should be. They're literally like concave.
And almost bones sticking out, you know.
But the other concern with pangolins coming off the trade in that state is refeeding syndrome. So if you think if anyone has ever watched that show Survivor, and you have these people that haven't eaten in weeks, then all of a sudden they win an award of a meal of hamburgers or whatnot, and as soon as they've eaten, they start throwing up because their body's not used to food.
Yeah.
It's the same with all species. So when a pangolin hasn't eaten, hasn't had water in weeks, to gently reintroduce food and gently reintroduce nutrition, electrolytes, water to that body in such a way that their body can absorb it and utilize it without actively rejecting it because their body is already so compromised.
Yeah.
So it's a tricky process, and I think it's constantly a balance, isn't it, Lex, between the conservationist who's helping with the slow release process, the walkers that are actively giving information constantly about what is the pangolin doing, is it eating, what species of ants and termites is it interested in, because that gives us an indication of which area might the pangolin have come from if they haven't shared with us. And then from the veterinary side, what is the status of this animal? So it's really like it's a constant conversation, it's a constant collaboration. So that sort of answer of like how long does it take, it's so dependent on the actual pangolin.
And how many pangolins do you have being
looked after at any one time?
It
really depends. I mean, there have been times when there have been 10 pangolins in a hospital at one time. We tend to find that the trade escalates towards the end of the year when people want Christmas money and stuff like that. That's when we see it peak. But it depends. I mean, you know, anything from 1 pangolin to 10 pangolins, 12 pangolins.
I want to ask a juicy question, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Do they mate for life?
No.
No, so it's like a random oak.
So yeah. So I'm an open book. You can ask me anything. So they're solitary. Pangolins are solitary. So they like to be alone. They don't seek out company. But when a pangolin is I suppose they go on heat. Do they go on heat? But
I think they reach a age of sexual maturity.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so when they have reached an age of sexual maturity, actually the female that leaves the scent and then the male finds her and then mating occurs.
Now, how do you do that? I mean, can you move your scale out the way it's in my
They're
hip?
made from the side.
So they spoon?
Pretty much, yeah.
Isn't that sweet? Pangolin spoon.
And one baby, one pup.
Yeah, I mean, very rarely twins, but essentially 1 pup, and for our species, 1 pup a year.
That's so little.
It is. That's the problem. And of course, it's, you know, people have talked about breeding in captivity, and there are places that are doing it in order to restock areas where they, you know, their populations have been decreasing or maybe have become extinct. the problem, obviously, with breeding in any kind of captive situation. You're taking an animal that has no knowledge of a wildlife, and then the question will be, how do you release them, and how do they adapt, and is it successful? But farming pangolins we've done the numbers. It's a losing game, so you can't farm them. Thank God.
And the fact that you're releasing all of them at Lapalala, will you look at relocating some of them to other areas?
Yeah, we're not releasing all of them at Lapalala. So pangolins that come in there, we'll have to gauge the capacity and the extent of the already indigenous population there, because that would be a problem. Obviously, if we're introducing more pangolins there, then the wild pangolins might need to disperse as well.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful of that. And then and also just the sun coming in there is nice. And so no, we don't. We if it's in Limpopo, then we would work with any number of reserves. They have to be over 15,000 hectares. They have to be over 15. So pangolins. But where we would need to have a ground operation. With people that support it, because you can hear how intensive it is. So that reserve would need to support it and have people on the ground. And I mean, they can move huge distances. So what we're really looking for, and if you see the downloaded data from telemetry, you can see exactly where they're going. And they will look around and then finally settle in a spot. And that's what one's looking for. What's the sunny one?
Which animals predate penguins?
So, obviously they're hard to, if it rolls up into a ball, I mean, you see pictures. Did you share a picture of a pangolin with a lion? I think it was on Eco Dusk's Cameroon. You often see pictures of pangolins with in the paws of a lion, kind of rolling it around. So there are predators. I mean, we've had pangolins being taken out by crocodiles. Yeah. So because they do swim and then they expose their belly and then they get taken out easily. I mean, crocodiles are apex predators. Leopard could take a pangolin out, and hyena. Yeah, I don't know.
I haven't had any reports of it. It's not impossible, but I haven't had any reports of it.
And then, I mean, we had one elephant in Must that stood on a pangolin. So, I mean, there are predators out there. And, that's what they're up against in the wild. You saw the burrow collapse in Pangolin Kulu's journey. Any kind of thing could happen. But, a mature pangolin who knows his territory will be aware of all of that.
Do they fight? I mean, do they go to war with each other?
Territorial, they do. So two males could fight over territory. They'd stand up, and I mean, to some extent. And they could slash each other with claws. And a bigger pangolin could wrap itself around a smaller pangolin and squeeze it.
See how friendly they are.
And how old do they get?
Well, we think probably, I mean, we've kind of, they're very understudied. So we don't know from birth to death in the wild. But there has been one pangolin in captivity that lived for 20 years. Which is also quite, I mean, there are pangolins in some American zoos. They're white-bellied pangolins that were taken out of West Africa before CITES, before they were uplisted to an Appendix 1 animal where there was no international trade allowed.
Just, I need to start wrapping it up so you can all, bugger off and go and have a life or something. Is there still a call for zoos in the world?
Yeah, and I mean, there's a good zoo will do a lot of scientific research and be developing diets, from a kind of a scientific point of view that could be very useful. So the good research zoos often collaborate with members of the IUCN Pangolin Specialist Group around the world who are scientists, researchers, conservationists. So there's old kind of negative relationships where we don't want pangolins in zoos.
It's kind of pointless. I mean, they're nocturnal anyway, aren't they, for the most part?
Yeah, that's true. But there are more and more. I mean, the IUCN Pangolin Specialist Group, the IUCN in general, supports collaborations with zoos. But we're talking about good zoos here, not the old-fashioned
Concrete shelf.
Caged creatures that have no sort of organic life and no, that are just deprived of any wild enrichment and, as you say, on a cement substrate. And then the breeders, of course, all of the small informal zoos that also act as agents for the trade.
Yeah.
Where you see sort of, tigers in small cages and, eagles.
Do you think at some point they'll start to regulate in this country as well the trade in exotics? I mean, to have a tiger in your backyard is just ludicrous.
They've got to do something about it. I mean, if a white-bellied pangolin came into South Africa, and it's not impossible because you get them in Zambia, it could come into South Africa. It wouldn't be protected by legislation.
Nothing. Isn't that, it's insane. It will protect everything from a mosquito